Are we live?
Yeah.
Have you seen Tim?
No.
I mean, he loves the element of surprise, but this seems really excessive. It's already 1 after. Usually he's early. I mean, a little bit early for these at least.
I haven't seen him.
All right. Well, we guys got news. David's holding a piece of paper that says that Tim actually won't be joining us today, unfortunately, but we did find a nice head cutout of our Seagull product manager, Sneha. Not that she can help me with the live stream though, so she's gonna sit down here for the call. But thank you everyone for being here. Seriously though, Tim is fine. He had to go back home for a family emergency. Don't worry, everything's okay. So before we get kicked off for today, we're curious where everyone is joining us from. If you can post it in the comment section, we'll give some shout outs to those people who are calling in. So I really feel conflicted about jumping straight into business today, since Tim and I usually at least make 2 bad jokes before we get to work on these calls. It's especially disappointing since we are coming live from the International Association for Great Lakes Research annual conference in Toronto, Ontario today. So that's disappointing because we would have been together in person, but even though we're down our Tim Kearns, there's still no shortage of Canada's other favorite Tims on every storefront or corner, it seems. Anyways, that was my bad joke in case you didn't get it without anyone to laugh at it. So we're going to talk Seagull today, but more importantly, we have 2 great expert guests joining us to talk about their work in the world of lake research and monitoring and data sharing. So we have Dr. Mike McKay from University of Windsor and Ms. Carolyn Dubois from the Gordon Foundation. So very quickly, before I get to start talking to our wonderful guests, we're going to touch on a few things that are new on Seagull. So the first thing isn't something that faces the public regarding Seagull, but it's more for the GLOS staff to help monitor Seagull's health and well-being. It's called the Health Dashboard. It's a way to keep track of the platforms that are reporting, the uptime, the speed of everything. And we've been working very hard on that, and shout out to Joe Smith, who's been leading that development for us. The next thing we have are a lot more buoys are in the water from the last time I spoke to you all. It's about to be field season, the water is warming up, the sun is shining, and people are putting their monitoring equipment back out in the lakes. So as you visit Seagull, there's a lot more green dots on the map, and we see those analytics ticking upward with the return of our users as well from their winter hibernation. So thank you, and keep checking for your favorite platforms to come online. And then finally, we have some new, almost public features that I'm really excited to share a glimpse at with you all today. And before I get into those, I want to give a shout out to our developer teams and testing team for a big push in the last week or more as we got ready for the GLOS annual meeting and the Seagull workshop. There are a few really great changes. One of them is this new grouping of parameters. So all the parameters now have a categorization that is color-coded. So when you click on a platform snapshot, such as the Chicago buoy, it'll show you all the different possible categories of parameters. And then you can see at the top that I have already pinned wind data. And you can pin other parameters as you wish to through your Seagull account. So if you click on that pinning option in the future, once it's released, we're very close to this, you will have an option of pinning a number of your favorite parameters that will always show up at the top of the snapshot when you click on a platform, if that parameter is available. So definitely check that out when it's available, and you can have your top couple things ready to go as soon as you get into a data or into a platform, excuse me. Okay, so without Tim, I can't really joke around with anyone else, but I guess I'll start the interviews. So please put any questions for our guests as we're talking to them right into the comment section, and we'll make sure we address them as we can. So here's your microphone. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Mike McKay from the University of Windsor. He is Executive Director at the Great Lakes Institutes for Environmental Research and researcher at the School of Environment. He has a wide research portfolio, including the cycling of nutrients, harmful algal blooms, and winter limnology. I attempted to attend part of his presentation yesterday so I could talk to you more about it, but I probably won't do it justice. So Mike, can you please explain for our wide array of Seagull users more about the impacts or value of your research?
Well, thanks, Shelby, for the invitation today. A little disappointed Tim's not here. It was explicit in my contract that Tim would be hosting the show today, so I'll follow up with the GLOS management about that oversight. But great to be here to join your viewers for this today. So really a lot of what I've been doing the past 25 years working in the Great Lakes has really focused on implications of climate change, whether it's this increased proliferation of harmful cyanobacterial blooms in the summer, or more recently over the past decade, 15 years, looking at climate warming, the influence on ice cover in the lakes. And really, winters are a blind box for our understanding of the lake ecosystem. We're starting to see some overwinter moorings in the lake. So I know Jay Austin's been a guest on a previous podcast, and your viewers have learned some more about Jay's work in Lake Superior. Want to see more of those kind of deployments in our lakes, because again, our ability to sample in the winter is really limited. We're working with the Joint Coast Guards to collect winter samples, but again, that's restricted in our ability, and to have more autonomous sensors in the lakes providing real-time data would be a real great help.
Thank you for that. And I totally agree. The winter is a huge data gap, as we've talked about, and has continued to be more understood in recent years, that we just don't have an appreciation of what's happening in the background of that. So good emphasis, and thank you for that context. So what is when we think about data or information, especially in relation to climate change, which I should mention, adapting to climate change is the theme of this year's IAGLR conference. So we're trying to focus on that for today's conversations. I think it's really important, and we don't talk about it a ton, but there's a lot of potential when it comes to sharing data and more specifically information with the public. So when you think about sharing data with the public, what's the value for you as a researcher to share that?
Yeah, for me, really, the revelations about the importance of data sharing with the public came following the water crisis in Toledo in 2014. At that time, I was working at a state university in Ohio, and we were amongst the first scientific responders to that event. I remember clearly waking up that morning, my inbox being inundated by just messages from friends. Just saw the do not drink alert come across. Is it safe to make a pot of coffee this morning? And really, that event highlighted some of the challenges we face in the Great Lakes, resulted in influx of infrastructure, but also GLOS came in and integrated with all the researchers working at that time. But one of the first things that we did, a number of the research institutes in Ohio deployed buoys at the water intakes for every municipal water intake in the state of Ohio. All those data got fed into a GLOS HABS portal. Data were real time. These data were used by the water utilities. They were used by the scientists, of course. These data were used by the public. I had friends at the time who were avid fishermen, and they would tell me that they're looking at the GLOS data to see where the blooms were in the lake to avoid them. And the other part of this was, and again, dealing with the public, transparency became really important in regaining the confidence of the public after that crisis. And so the state of Ohio, and kudos to them, transparency was a number one priority. So not only, you know, were data available related to our water intakes through GLOS, Ohio EPA started posting data from toxin analyses on their own website. So this was something I'd never seen before. I was used to working with agencies, reaching out to them, asking them to send me spreadsheets of data that no one would ever see otherwise.
Yeah.
And so it was a transformation.
That's fantastic to hear. I think that that starts to get to my next question a little bit, which was going to be, when it comes to an information access platform like Seagull or, you know, the old GLOS system, what are the benefits? But I think maybe even more than that, you know, like, where are there trade-offs, or do you see it being, you know, advantageous, or are there hangups for the research community to start sharing more of that data when, you know, it's, you know, precious for publications or any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you could ask 10 researchers and you might get 10 different answers for that. I am in favor of open data. I was speaking to some of my agency colleagues this morning because, you know, we now have data available through a number of the federal, provincial, state agencies. And some of those actually are integrated into GLOS or a DataStream, but they're not up to date. And so, you know, when you're dealing with an agency, then you have to start addressing questions about data confidence. And an agency often doesn't want to put their data out there until it's gone through full QA/QC, until it's been approved by management. Are there implications? You certainly want to provide data, be open with data, but you also want to provide context because, again, not everyone who may see those data will be well versed in what they might mean, and you don't want to instill panic. So it's this sort of a fine line you walk, you know, between providing open data, current real-time data, transparency, but also, you know, making sure that we can provide the data in a manner that can be usable, understandable to a wide range of people. So maybe it's not one size fits all. And I know that Seagull, you know, has ways of viewing data, looking at data in different ways. And again, that those different ways may be more accessible to some groups than others. And I think it's nice that you know, they have those options now.
Well, great. That was a fantastic answer. I appreciate your input on that and the insight about the context and the, you know, some of the sensitivities about sharing data and how we run into those issues. And that also, I think, is a really great transition for us to move to Ms. Carolyn Dubois. So thank you for joining us as well. Here's your microphone. Ms. Carolyn Dubois is the Executive Director of the Water Program at the Gordon Foundation, and the person who led the development of DataStream, an online platform for information on water health. So I know Tim was really hoping to do the interview with you today as well, since you know, you've been great partners with GLOS, and specifically him and you have had some good conversations over the years, and the amazing work that your team does, he was really excited to share more with. So our listeners might not know a lot. Can you share a little bit about DataStream and the service you provide?
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, so DataStream is an open access platform for sharing water quality data. So we have over 1,000 parameters shared on the platform. We've been working sort of in other parts of the country for quite a while, but are fairly new to the Great Lakes, actually. So Great Lakes DataStream has, you know, data that's contributed by, you know, it'll be community monitoring groups to government agencies sort of at all levels, Indigenous communities. So all of this data is brought together in one place. And we're really built DataStream to solve a big gap that we've seen across Canada and in other places where you see, you know, there's so much monitoring and research happening. There's just a lot of information out there, and yet you can't get your hands on it. So DataStream is built to address that issue specifically. And so I think one of the important things to highlight is, you know, on DataStream, you know, people will say, well, what data predominantly? And I always sort of answer that what you'll see on DataStream is a reflection of the questions people are asking. So, you know, we'll have mercury data, we have data on hydrocarbons, there's pesticide data, you know, temperature is so important for fish. Like, you can really, on DataStream, you'll see, you know, all of these parameters depending on what the local issues are and the local questions. And one of our big, in addition to bringing all the data together in one place, but the big value add is that the data is standardized. And so just to pick up on, this point around the importance of metadata, really good metadata, so that you can reuse data. So DataStream data is standardized. We use the WQX data schema developed by the US EPA and USGS. And that's been really, really, sort of a game changer for us in terms of being able to put data out. And the data is also machine readable. So people get really, really excited about modeling and about AI. But it's important to remember that standardized machine readable data is really the bedrock for all of that. And so that's what DataStream is trying to do, is just serve up that data and do the fairly unsexy work of getting it all ready for those much sexier things.
That is so awesome. And it sounds like a ton of data.
It is. We have lots and lots of data. So in the Great Lakes alone, we have 8 million unique observations collected by 50 organizations at 22,000 sites. And I think it's important to say that we're only just getting started. So we'd like to see more data on the platform. We know there's more data out there. So yes, so already lots of data and growing.
Excellent. So one question that I kind of asked Mike was about the value of the data that's communicated, or maybe more importantly, how it's transformed into information. What is the value of that can lead to actionable insight for decision making from your view?
So there's so many things, and some of them can be surprising. We're really excited to see a lot of interesting uses of data. I think one of them that's really important is just using the data on DataStream in monitoring program design. So having a look, we've seen a lot of organizations have a look on DataStream. They're often surprised to see the other groups that are out there monitoring. And rather than, sample maybe in a place where there's lots of data, they're able to instead target limited resources to places where there aren't a lot of data available. And so that's been really neat. And it's also brought groups together. They'll find out that the community just upstream is monitoring. What are they monitoring for? We should talk to them. We share a watershed. So that kind of thing is really, really important. So there's sort of a networking aspect to it. But as I mentioned, DataStream data is also being used in some cool sort of predictive modeling and AI. So Dr. Nandita Basu, through her Lake Futures program, so her lab at the University of Waterloo is doing some really interesting stuff around nutrient modeling. And the important thing there is they're pulling data together from multiple sources, including DataStream, and using that to develop models for nutrient loading, which is very, very important for both places that are monitored, but also some watersheds that are not. So filling big data gaps there. But I think you really hit the nail on the head at the beginning, which is all of this data is wonderful, but it needs to be turned into sort of information and knowledge. And so taking the, as I said, bedrock standardized data and doing stuff with it. So whether it's through modeling or watershed health assessments, I think that's what's really key. And then people can make decisions based on that data.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And to kind of steer towards Seagull a little bit, we know that you're familiar with Seagull and you've been a Smart Great Lakes partner for a number of years now. So can you please tell our viewers how DataStream and Seagull interface, if we're enemies or if we're friends, and how they complement each other?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. And I like that. Are we frenemies? We are not. We are actually just friends. So the systems is, I think it's understandable that people might think, okay, hey, I'm going to this website, there's this map, Great Lakes, lots of data points. They're both open. We share a lot in common. But in fact, Seagull and DataStream do very different things, and that makes them very much complementary. So, Seagull takes in, I'm not going to get all of the data types, but, a lot of data from buoys and like live sensors, and you've got real-time data, which is, we hear people asking for that kind of information all the time. We don't take that data. DataStream is more centered around data that's collected by people in the field. So that'll be like, field observations or grab sample data, so data sent to the lab, and our data is not real-time. So I think the two things are really, really complementary and tell sort of different parts of the larger picture. The other distinction would be that where Seagull is very focused on the Great Lakes proper, I think with some exceptions and some growth in other places, DataStream is, the lion's share of our data is from watersheds. So you think of it as, people are generally going in watersheds and sampling. And so the watersheds that feed into the Great Lakes proper, that's where our focus and the lion's share of our data is coming from.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And if you are in a region and want to know more about water quality data in the watersheds, we recommend that you check out the Great Lakes DataStream and think about that and how to engage. And if they want to, and if they don't know why they should care, quickly, why should they care about their data in their watersheds?
Well, I mean,
it's not the Great Lakes.
It's like pretty important. You should care for all kinds of reasons. People love and care about water for good reason. Just in terms of ecosystem health, in terms of recreation, of course, but just the sustainability and the health of our communities, our drinking water comes from these watersheds. So, I mean, pretty important places. People definitely care.
It's a good reminder, like what happens on the watershed eventually gets into the larger basin. So we should definitely care about that. So I'm going to quickly pause here. Are there any questions from the audience, David, or are we okay to keep going? Okay, so I know that
Katie likes your jersey.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Me
go
too.
Leafs.
Big game tonight.
Big game tonight.
So I know the conference starts again in a few minutes, but before we separate, are there any final thoughts from either of you or things you'd like to share after, having this conversation? Or, and you don't have to say anything at all. I just want to.
One thing I'd say is just it's been really exciting over the last few years, and I think we've been touching on this, but there has in the past been more hesitation around open data sharing, and that's really changing, and it's just really exciting. I think things are really starting to take off, and people are really, really open and understand the value of open access. So that's been pretty exciting stuff, and we're really, really excited to be integrating with Seagull. We think that this is a huge step, and will get people the information they're looking for.
Fantastic, and we're very excited to work with that as well. Anything else? Yeah.
And I think a lot of the, maybe hesitancy you've seen from the academic community in past years is starting to be addressed. And we now, it's no longer you have to worry about on data by making it openly accessible. You can now get credit for submitting data. There's a lot of data journals, living data that you receive DOIs on, identifiers that can be so you're never being scooped anymore. There's more incentive to get the data out there, through a variety of different academic journals, but also through these data platforms. And I also like this idea. We've been siloed for so long. And again, a lot of the data went into what we call the gray literature, not easily accessible. So the efforts of Seagull, of DataStream, to bring those together and make them more easily searchable for the community is welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for both of your time today and your great work that you do, and for sharing it with me and our audience. This was really a fun live stream. I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much. Go Leafs.
Go Leafs.
And thank you everyone for calling in. See you in June.